Okay, so I just want to talk about the three-way turnout for a few minutes here. I'm not going to show you how I solder it because it's all done in the scratch-built turnout a few episodes previously. But just want to mention some of the advantages and challenges to building one. Okay, the advantages is you get actually two turnouts in the space of one, right? So this is a number 6 three-way, so you get like almost, it looks like a number 8 almost and a number 6 turnout sort of overlapping each other. So in order to do this with two turnouts, you need twice this amount of space. Okay, so that's the advantage, a real space saver. Plus they look really cool, and they are prototypical as well in class 1. At least I know in Canada they had one in Calgary. But anyway, one of the challenges is, well, okay, there's 2 sets of points, so there's 4 points you got to build. And there's 3 frogs, okay? All right, 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to show you how I build my frog right after this, okay, in a few moments, because they're not that hard to build and they're far from perfect. What's important is you get the top of the head of the rail. Let me just give you just a quick illustration. So when you have your rail, let's say this is the top of the rail like this, you want to file it down on an angle like that. Okay, and then you can actually run another piece like this and then file it down like that. Like, there's different ways you can do it. Okay, so whatever you feel comfortable with, but I'll show you how I do mine. I do mine like this, and then I just fill it full of solder. I backfill it full of solder, and I'll show you how that's done. But anyway, they wire up very similar, and if you build them according to the handlaidtrack.com or FastTrack's template, which are once again excellent, just put the isolation gaps and the insulator gaps on the PC ties exactly the way they illustrate it, and all will go well. Okay. Okay, so I just want to show you how I build up my frogs for these turnouts. There's many ways to do this. You can pin the rail in place or make up your own jig, or in the case of FastTracks with their aluminum jigs, there's they have they're CNC'd, so you can drop the rail down into a slot, so they fit perfectly. But if you're doing it this way, you're sort of eyeballing it, and you're using a track gauge and so on. I like to just glue 2 or 3 pieces of just scrap plastic. Like, just put a weight down, like on top of the rail like that, and then just glue a piece of plastic, and in this case 3 places or 2, and then just let that set up. Get it, so that it's, lays over top of the plan nice. Give or take, a few millimeters here and there. It's okay, you'll be able to adjust that when you go to solder it, right? Okay, and then when that's dry, just take it off the drawing like this, and then just put your weight back on top of the plastic shims that you've glued to the 2 pieces of rail. And then you can take even a pair of tweezers like this to pinch it tight. Making sure also that you've left lots of extra on the ends here, just a ½ inch or inch or so. Okay, right? And then take some, like a brush and some soldering paste, and just stab in a good swab in there. Just cover the whole thing with paste, actually the whole area. All right, and then take your soldering iron and heat up both rails at about this area right here, and just flood solder into this frog, quite a bit of it. Don't be afraid to just wick in a whole 2 or 3 inches of solder if you have to. If it's thin solder like this, I wick in almost this much, just all the way in, boom. And then once it's dry, or once it's set, sorry, you can just pop those pieces of plastic off and clean up the rail. And then you can just file that down. It'll all be filled and it'll all look like one piece. It'll be like one nice frog. And then once we tin all our PC boards, just heat the section back here. We won't touch this section yet, but we'll solder back here where we apply heat so that when we do add heat here, it won't come apart because it's already secured on these other PC boards here. So you get a nice clean frog there. Okay? Okay, so here's my less than perfect frog. But it will look perfect, but it isn't. See, look at the bottom. See the gap there? See when I filed, like, it's not important really, like how accurate the bottom is, because that's all going to get filled full of solder. I'm going to show you now. But notice the top here. That's what's important, the top of the rail, because that's where the wheels ride. They catch that frog there. So that's what's important, because this is all going to be soldered down to a PC tie anyway. Okay? So what I do is I just lay it down like this, and I put my weight on there to hold the frog in place. In this case, I'm just going to use these little pinch tweezers. I don't have to have them because you can touch it up with a file later too. Okay? And I'm going to take some of this paste here. I'm going to put a good blob on there. It's all going to melt away anyway, but it's going to clean as the solder flows in. And that's what we want. That's how you get a really nice clean, tight bond with solder. Okay, I just dip my tip in there to clean, and then I'll show you. Okay, so I heat up both rails. Watch the flux melt. Okay, and then I'm just going to flood that whole frog. Quite a bit of solder, actually. Don't worry if it builds up a bit on the top like that, see? That's what you want. It'll sag in a little bit too. See the bottom there? See how it filled? Okay. So what I'm going to do is pop off those pieces of plastic. Comes off easy, right? You can clean that up with your eraser or light, some 600 sandpaper or 800 on it, whatever you want to polish your rail with. And in this case, I'm just going to take the bottom of this frog like this. See? And then the top, you can give it a couple of light strokes too if you want. And there you have it. Scratch built frog. After you build a few of those, they'll become second nature. Okay? So I just want to point this out. So this is this point rail right here. Notice how it's hinged with a rail joiner. So I just take a rail joiner and I just solder the rail joiner about halfway, like onto this rail. Try not to get solder inside of this end. And then you slide your point in there. And then just rock it back and forth a bit, and it'll just give way like that, see? And this drops in there like this. Okay, so I just want to point out a couple of things here when you're soldering up, especially with this 3-way. And I do the same thing with just the standard turnout as well. Is I'll solder this down here, the first couple of ties right here, 1, 2 before the throw bar. I don't solder these ones here usually. Like I leave these 3 and I don't solder anything on the throw bar until last. Well, especially in this 3-way, you got to be careful. I went and by accident I soldered this section, and this whole bar is supposed to slide, so I had to desolder that and clean that up. This point here gets pinned and soldered to the bar, see, so it goes back and forth like this one here in between, see how this point is in between these 2 rails right here. Now also I didn't solder this, see how loose this is, this outside rail? So I solder here and here, right, get the start engage, and then I solder up here 1, and then maybe 1 right here. Just leave a lot of the rail, like just line it up nice, but leave it loose so you can move it around, because you're going to want to play around just a little bit with the rail to just tweak the gauge, okay? And the more options you have, the better. If you're within the curvature of, there's a little bit of tolerance, a millimeter or 2 here and there, it'll make a big difference. If you go and solder 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, then how are you going to move this rail if you want to tweak it a bit to line up with maybe this frog here, see? This has to gauge to this frog right here. So your frog's already in place, so you want to be able to move this rail back and forth just a little bit, just to tweak the gauge and the flange clearance and so on. Okay, so don't go solder 1, 2, 3, 4, like don't go all the way up. Just think it through, leave things wild or loose kind of, and then just start putting your NMRA gauge, and make sure you use the flange ways. So you hear the flange ways, because you want to be able to pass through. See? The flange way is nice. I think I got lucky with this one. Everything just laid up really nice, and I tweaked a few things. I'm really happy with this turnout. But then here we go again, right? Like I'm not an absolute pro with this stuff. I'm learning the game too. I've had some practice, but the more you build, the better you get, and the nicer your turnouts turn out. And so far things roll through real nice. See that? And then down this section here too, and then through here. Okay. So I just want to mention this because I don't think I talked about it in a previous turnout build tutorial, about making these little bends like on the rail. Like for example with this guardrail, there's a bend here and a bend there. I just lay it over top, right, and then a piece of rail a little bit longer than the actual piece. Like for example, this guardrail here was cut larger than this, and then I just file it down or touch it on the disc sander later, but I just mark with a pencil. You can see the pencil mark there still on top of the lead, see that? And then I just simply grab a pair of needle nose pliers. I don't even file a relief cut in the side of the web of the rail either, and I just bend it, eyeball it, lay it on the plan, and see if it lines up. Good enough, right? These little ones like this, where there's a little end piece, you can make it longer and then file it down to size later, or you can put a couple of relief cuts with the file, just a sharp file, just to help the corner bend better, see? And this is for the little frog in here. It's a little baby. Well, actually, it's a guardrail. That's not enough there, but you can see where that's going to go, and then this frog will lay in there like that. So I just grab it. Give it a little bit of a bend, tweak. And then this one I'll just cut off right here. This with a pair of nippers. All right. And then just clean up the end with a file. It's nice to make up all the parts first, to get them all done, and then dry run them, and then leave some parts proud. Like, you'll figure it out as you go. And then you can just file them up to size. Like, for example, this frog right here, you can see. See how I extended the rail past it? There's a gap here. Okay. It's actually part of this guardrail too, but I like to make these guardrails separate. Because then you got to make all these bends have to all line up perfectly if you try to make this all in one piece. Whereas here I'll just, when this is cut to size, same right here, I'll cut this off a bit right here and then cut this one off a little bit right here. But I'll solder this one in near the end, because frogs I like to leave till almost last so that I can adjust them in or out this way with the NMRA gauge, so that, you know, it lines up with this outside rail. And a lot of times I'll leave these rails unsoldered on the outside here, so I can just tweak them back just a tiny bit, you know, just let them float until you get the frog, because the frog is going to be relative to the outside of the rail there. In this case it's a bit different, a little more complicated, but so yeah, so to bend your guardrail pieces, or any rail for that matter, I just grab the rail with a pair of needle nose like that. Just give it a bend it back, bend it forward, whatever, until you get it right. So I'm getting down to the end here. You know, this turnout, this three-way turnout, is a real game changer as far as the developing the signature scene of the locomotive shops, because you know, I'm going to be able to branch off a turnout off of these two leads here. Like, this will go down to module C here, this right-hand diverging one, and then these two will go to the shops, and I'll be able to branch off a couple more turnouts off of those to build up, you know, my ladder for the, you know, the little shop yard. Otherwise I lose, you know, 16 inches or 18 inches if I have to add another turnout to get this three-way diverging turnout. So I'm really happy about that. It took me a while to get hyped up for it too. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to do this one first. I wanted to do a lot of the other ones to get my confidence up, you know. Because, you know, let's face it, it's what it's about, right? It's about just doing it, making mistakes, practicing, getting confidence, and everyone's the same that way. Like, nobody, it's not a black art, you know. It really isn't. Like, that's just a myth. You know, if you stand back and look at it and not try it or not do it, you're going to always think that way, but it's really not. Like, anyone can learn how to do this if you're willing. If you're willing, right? And I'm willing, and I'm really glad too, and it's very rewarding too. Like, when you get one built up and the train runs through it, oh, it's just so rewarding to have a special turnout custom made by your own hands on your railroad. And you know what really surprises me is I'm really surprised I don't see hardly ever any of these on a shelf layout. I mean, they're made for shelf layouts in terms of the space that they save and the options they provide, you know. Anyway, so I just got to lay this frog in here and a couple more guardrails, and then do the points, which I've done before. I'll be doing them the same way with the pins, the brass pins, and then I'll just soak her down with isopropyl, lift the turnout, clean it up, add the extra ties, and, you know, it'll get painted like the rest. Okay. Okay, so this completes the three-way turnout, and what I did for the ties was the same as the others. I used number 155 by Evergreen Scale Models, 60 thou by 100 thou. And then to pack out the thinner PC ties, I use like 100 by like 30 thou, or whatever. It depends on the thickness of the PC board ties, okay? Probably better that they're a little bit thicker maybe, because these are the ones that actually anchor the turnout down to the sub road bed. Okay, so this completes all my track work up to the end of Module B. So as most of you may or may not know, there's A, B, C module. There's 3 modules, right? So I've now finished my track work or turnouts for Module A and B. So I'm going to leave C alone right now. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go back now. I'm going to lay all my turnouts and all my track. I'm going to wire it all into the bus. And then I'm going to do test runs over everything. See if any tweaks need to be made before any painting takes place. And then what I'm going to do is once that passes that examination or test, I'm going to get the airbrush out and I'm going to just start painting. I might do some by hand as well. So I'll do my best to cover that, the painting process for content as well for you. So just want to say thanks to everyone that has subscribed lately. I want to thank you to all my original subscribers, the ones that have been the main base of the channel and helping it to grow. I want to thank everyone for all their, intelligent remarks, their participation, the maturity. This is one of the probably the most mature communities I've seen around on YouTube. I have to say that. Like, I check out a lot of channels too when I can. I breeze through some of them. I check comments all the time, and I just really respect all of you and the way you carry yourself. It's exemplary. Your character and just the, I don't know what else to say. I'm just really impressed with that. And other people have told me that as well. Wow, man, you are really lucky to have a community on your channel the way you do, because the people are intelligent, they're smart, they're kind and considerate. They criticize well. They don't overload you with stuff. It's just, I don't know what else to say really, right? Like, it's just a real pleasure and a joy to be part of Boomer Dioramas and the way it's developed in the last year. And it's because of all of you, okay? So thanks again. Stay tuned. I got lots of really cool content coming. Check the community tab as well. I'll be giving little photographs and updates on there as well too, okay? So I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.